Look at me.
Go.
Good afternoon. Hi there. How are you? Welcome into the Rational Male 101, episode 31, How Men and Women Communicate. I'm your host, Pat Campbell, radio talk show host from Tulsa, Oklahoma, joined by our cult leader, Rollo Tomasti, the Rational Male. Mass is officially in session.
Yes.
How you doing, Rollo?
High priest of the red pill. Yes.
High priest of the red pill. We got so much to talk about today. Let's just cut to the chase.
Sure.
We're going to start with the Hunter Biden story. For those of you who don't know, Hunter Biden is one of Joe Biden's sons, and he's Beau Biden. His older son passed away about 2 years ago from a brain tumor, and Hunter is in the news in a variety of ways. He's involved in some financial scandals in the Ukraine and China, but what really got him in the news this week was he is the subject of a paternity suit by a 28-year-old lady from Arkansas. Now, what makes this extremely interesting is that it appears Mr. Biden has been caught spinning multiple plates here.
Yeah.
So let's give a little background on Hunter. Hunter was in the Navy for, 23 years. He had to leave suddenly, unexpectedly, over a little cocaine problem. He was also married to his first wife for 22 years. He got married when he was 23 and she was 24. And I think they had 3 kids, all right? Somewhere around 2015, 2016, he separated from her and moved out of the house. Meanwhile, his brother, Beau Biden, dies of brain cancer. And Hunter does something we're going to talk about today, which I think is a breach of the bro rules. Okay,
yeah, bro code.
He starts. Well, I'm not going to say dating. He starts dating Beau's widow, except he's not dating her. He's sleeping with his brother's
nailing
widow,
her is what he's doing. Yeah.
which is a no-no, right? And we'll get into that in a minute or two here. So then we want to fast forward to the end of April of this year. All of a sudden, they announced that they're no longer an item. 2 weeks later, we've got Hunter back in the news, and this time he's getting married to. He's 49. He's getting married to Melissa Cohen, who is a divorcee, and she's 42, so she's 17 years younger than him. Okay, and all looks happy in paradise until this week. We've got this 28-year-old that comes crawling out of the woodwork, and she is claiming that Hunter sired her child, right? And it appears that he's I want to get a picture of him reading the Rational Male, especially the chapter on
gonna need it,
because it looks like he's spinning 3 plates at the same time. And meanwhile, he's got these investigations going into some of these sweetheart deals that his father worked out for him when he was vice president in both China and the Ukraine. So that's sort of the Cliff Notes version of Hunter Biden and where we are right now.
Right. Yeah. I'm not going to post it right here. Well, I mean, I guess I could, but if you've seen the picture of these girls, these gals, I don't even want to call them girls because the youngest one is 28 and she actually looks like she's the older of the two. And then the one that he just married is like something like what, 43 or 42. No, she's not. She's 32.
No. The one he just married is 42.
Are you sure? Because I'm looking at it right now and it says 30.
Oh, no, I said 17 years younger, didn't I?
Yeah, you did. It says she's 32.
32. I'm right. You're right. 32.
So what? I mean, she's.
But she doesn't look too good for 32.
Oh man, yeah.
Are you talking about Melissa Cohen? Okay,
yeah,
so
Cohen.
but let's back it. Do you have the picture of him with his wife of 22 years? Kathleen.
I can grab it. Hang on one second here. This is a weird site. It's not letting me do it.
So, anyways, the look. First of all, he looks happy. He's looking forward. She looks like I've just about had it with this clown.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a great look, is it not? Yeah, that 22 years.
I'm capping these right now. Hang on one second.
Okay. Yeah. So that's Kathleen. That's his lovely bride of 22 years.
Right. Okay.
And when they got married, he was 23. She was 24. And had he listened to the Rational Male, the advice, he would have waited until he was at least 30, if not 35 or 36. Right.
Right. Okay. That's his old wife. That's his wife of when they met when they were like 22 and 23 or 23 and 24. Right. Okay, so she's the longtime wife. All right. Not bad looking, not, I mean, I hate to go all gossipy here, but she's okay, for her age right there.
Well, she's had 3 children too.
Yeah, and she's had 3 children on top of everything else. Right. So
by the way, this marrying into the Biden family is sort of like becoming a Kennedy. It's just not a good thing to do.
Yep. Okay.
Now, do you have the picture of Beau's? Okay, so we've got Beau's widow,
Okay, I got them both. I got them both together here. Let me.
Okay, it's
there
Hallie,
we go.
right?
There we go. Okay.
Okay, and that's who he's been nailing for the last 2 years, which is creepy in and of itself. We'll get into that a little bit later. And then who do we have next? Okay, so that's him and Haley.
And the blonde is Cohen. Is Melissa Cohen?
Yes, she's the 32-year-old.
Right.
And she's from South Africa. She's a model.
And she's an she's an activist too. She's a model activist.
I know she's a model. I love that when they say I'm a model.
I'm a model activist. I've seen some of the other pics. Like, did you see? Have you looked at her Instagram?
Yes.
Like everything is like she's. I don't know if she's like a climate change person or whatever.
Sure
but
I'm sure she is. He'll be right there with Prince Harry holding hands.
Yeah, exactly.
My favorite line in their story was though it says Biden tied the knot on May 16th with South African beauty named Melissa Cohen in what is her second marriage. Here's my favorite line: they met and fell hard and got hitched.
Yes.
What more do you want, right there?
Well, and before everybody thinks that like we're just throwing this out there as some like sick, like TMZ gossip stuff, there is actually a point to all of this, and the point is that okay, you kind of have to look at how this guy came into being who he is right now. He's 49 years old. Okay, his history is this: he was in the Navy. Now, did we find out if he was a pilot or not?
I can't remember. He was in the Navy for 22 years.
Yeah, because he was in it for a while. Yeah,
Naval Academy. He got married.
Yep, Navy dude. Okay,
right.
And married at 23 to a woman who was a year older than. Right. Now, Grant looks good, fine, whatever. And maybe back then getting married at 23 wasn't quite as big a deal as it is right now, because the average age of marriage right now is about 28. And so that was
for women?
That is well for men. I think it's actually younger, and for women it's older. It's like 28 is the average age of first marriage. I think that's the mean average, anyways. And so you got a guy who is fresh out of the Navy, or I guess maybe he was still in the Navy at the time when he got married, wasn't he?
Well, no, he was. Yeah, he just got out of Naval Academy.
Oh, he did. Okay, yeah. So here he is. In my book, he's marrying early. She's marrying early for sure. Nothing wrong.
She's hitched herself to a winner, though. First of all, the Biden name, and he's an officer in the military. His star is headed up.
So probably going to get picked up really quickly, or that's. Remember how I was talking about this on what was it? It was on the Red Man group, I believe, when we were talking about whether or not women actually vet for men, or if they like actually make like sort of they look for perspective in men, right? In this case, definitely have perspective in this guy. And so he's marrying early. He gets 22, 23 years into the marriage. And now, for whatever reason, he's decided that he's done with his wife. He's got I think he's got 3 daughters or something like that.
3 kids, right?
He's done with his wife. I don't know what that situation was about that. And then decides that he wants to hook up with his dead brother's
That's just wrong.
Widow.
That's just wrong. That's so wrong.
I don't know what. Okay, so people are going to say, well, geez, he's just a whack job. There's got to be something wrong with him. Well, look at it this way. The guy got married very, very early, never really explored his options, certainly never spun any plates, at least that we know. So what's the first thing he does when he's done with the wife? Well, now he realized suddenly, he realizes he's a Biden, right? Suddenly he realizes his sexual market value, maybe a bit too late. And so when I talk about guys going through like a midlife crisis, it's not a midlife crisis so much as it is a guy realizing that he actually has some sexual market value after the fact. Like the decision's already been made, and the guy gets to be about 36, 37 years old, or maybe he gets to be about 40 and he goes, damn, I would have lived my life differently had I known that my sexual market value peak was going to start, it's going to start hitting my prime or start hitting my stride when I'm 37, 38 years old. So you got this guy who's just getting out. He's like, okay, I know chicks want to get with me.
Right.
Let me go bang my brother's widow.
Well, here's the one thing. If I ever got him on the radio program, number one question I want to ask him, Hunter, got to ask you, do you sniff their hair like the old man does? That's what I want to know. Do you just bury your nose in their hair and give it a big sniff?
Now I don't. Now you got to also take into consideration that like his dad is Joe Biden, and Joe Biden's their mom died pretty early too, right? I mean, she was in a
When they were
train
little kids,
crash.
their mother was killed in a car crash, and his dad quickly remarried Dr. Jill Biden, who's his lovely blushing bride. But Joe Biden, by the way, is one of these guys that constantly engages in what you warn against, the self-deprecating humor, how lucky he is to have met Jill, and how, he actually married up by marrying her. And it's like, dude, you want to be the president? Seriously?
Yeah.
And you're playing yourself down like this.
And so the reason I want to bring that up, and I'm glad you brought that up too, is that here you have the father that is certainly subscribing to what I would otherwise call beta male activity, or certainly blue. Let's not call him beta, because let's call him blue. Definitely blue pill. Okay. Now, whether or not the guy is alpha or beta is sort of up. People are going to say, "Oh no, he's whatever your politics are, he's going to make him beta or he's going to make him alpha." Bill Clinton is definitely an alpha. I mean, let's just get down to brass tacks here. He's an alpha. He's a blue pill alpha, but he's an alpha. Same thing I think applies to Joe Biden, and that gets him into trouble because he thinks it's cool and it's okay to like be all touchy, Mr. Touchy Feely with women who are just basically taking him and saying no. Don't pushing him off kind of thing. Don't touch me. Now, if that's dad, what does that make the sons? Does the apple fall from the tree too far from the tree? And so you've got a guy. I would say that a lot of that blue pill stuff sort of still sticks with this guy. And so then what happens is he's done with her, and now you've got another girl, a 28-year-old girl, who's saying it's your baby. And then you've got this new chick, Cohen, who, looks hotter than certainly all of them, at least comparatively, I would say. She's probably a lot more sexual, and she probably sees him a mile away. Now, this is the other thing I wanted to get to, is when you are a guy and I don't want to call him beta male because he might not be beta, but definitely blue pill, definitely subscribes to that romanticism that, oh, she's my one, she's my soulmate. Women, particularly necessitous women, see this. They understand that mentality in you, and they look for that, especially after the epiphany phase. Women look for that in guys, especially successful guys, especially guys who have a lot of money. They end up playing the role of the soulmate. She is the most dangerous.
She is the most dangerous out of the three chicks.
Yes.
She has the potential to Anthony Bourdain him.
Right.
You could just tell by the look, and he's already, both of them have admitted, it was like quick, it was instantaneous, and it was just like, raw lust, man. They just dove into it, right?
Yeah, and Bourdain is another good illustration of this.
Let me back up to the widow though, okay? Because a lot of people, when I put that up there, they're sending me stuff from the Old Testament about, you're supposed to marry your brother's, widow. Well, first of all, he's not marrying her. He's banging her. There's nothing in the Bible about banging your brother's widow. Okay. So let's not kid ourselves here. He's not in this to do the right thing. So that's part of the problem there. And to me, we talked off air about this. There's certain things you don't do. I am the oldest of 13. Okay. I've got 7 brothers, 5 sisters. Nobody ever came out and said it, but we all know you don't date anybody that your brother has dated. Okay. It's not, some people are even more like, I won't date somebody my friends, been dating before, but with your brothers, and you sure as hell don't marry somebody that your brother's been married to. I've actually seen people who got married and divorced, right? And then the brother marries the divorced wife of another brother. I mean, that's just, you're never going to have a happy Thanksgiving again, ever.
Yeah, and I'm looking in the chat here, and they're saying, Pat, it's a joke. Really, people are, they agree with you, and I understand that. But there are people that are going to say that.
Yeah.
And we were just talking about that. I did the religion and red pill yesterday, and that was actually a topic that came up, was marrying your brother's bride or whatever, and carrying that on. Now you got to understand that's also a traditional thing from the Old Testament. So. Yeah, I get it. I get why people were saying stuff like that, but he's not marrying or he's not taking care of. But that's another thing, is like, do we take care of widows, kind of thing? Why is it that we take care of widows? Why is it that's something that we should protect, right?
I also think he may be a guy, and I don't know this for certain, but he strikes me, with their Catholic upbringing, although they're cafeteria style Catholics. He may be somebody who was a trad con and kept himself behaving for that 22 years. And now he's out and he realizes, hey, look, I'm 49. I'm good looking, right? I mean, I've kept myself
making up for missing out. Yep.
Right. Exactly. And plus, with these deals that his dad set him up with in the Ukraine and China. I talked to you. I've known businessmen and politicians that have gone over to China, and it's no secret, especially if you're a business guy, they're going to send prostitutes, women to be with you, escorts to be with you, and the same in the Ukraine. The Ukraine's like, what is your fetish? Just tell me, and we'll send somebody over there to take care of you. Yep. So now all of a sudden, the world is his oyster. He's making up for that 22 years of suck with, the wife and the 3 kids.
Making up for missing out. And yeah, exactly. And thanks, Chris Von Erich, for that $50. I really appreciate that. I had to stop in the middle of that. Chris has he's starting his own podcast. He's starting his own Rational Male or Rational Male book group of some sorts. I just want to give him a quick shout out because I know that I told him I'd come on at some point. Yeah. So here's the deal is you've got a guy who's 22, 23 years old. He's been through the last 20 some odd years. He's gone through his 20s. He's gone through his 30s, and a good portion of his 40s here. Is no longer involved with the wife and now realizes who he is and is making up for missing out. It's not just for women, right? It's for men as well. And so what happens is when you are blue pill and you never have the opportunity to really sort of unplug from that and to kill off the beta, kill off all of those, those idealizations that the blue pill taught you. This is what happens. This is why you get into this whirlwind romance. And this is why you are what I call a big fish. And that's exactly what he is right now. He's a big fish. So when you're like that and you're worth a good chunk of change and you wear your emotions on your sleeve, and when you are, blue pill to a fault, women see that. They wait for those opportunities. You want to know who else did that? What's his face? Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos, another great example. The guy is out of his relationship with Mackenzie. Another what? They were together for like 6 months before he proposed to marry her. Now, who comes along is Dirty Sanchez, right? And she comes along, and because she's done this before, right? I know. And so I'm trying to focus on the damn camera here. But she sees, she sees an opportunity right there. Right. And it's for a guy like Bezos, it's really easy to see, right? Yeah. For a guy like Hunter Biden here, I would say that for a woman who's got some sort of talent, they're looking for that. And we've talked about this in the past. Donovan Sharp and I have talked about this in the past about predatory women. And this is, I hate to say that because it seems like it's very negative to talk about predator, but they're out there. And this chick right here knows that she's a model. She's got her thing going. She's like the perfect fit for him too, because she's an activist. She probably would fit in very well with the liberal-y side of the Biden family. I don't want to dislike the Bidens. I mean, they look like so wholesome and everything until you read stuff like this and you go, oh my God. But yeah, it's just, this is a good example. Bezos is a good example.
When I put this up on social media, immediately, people, guys would start saying, okay, first of all, he's 49. He's nailing 3 chicks at the same time, right? Mm-hmm. Hashtag respect. Then the next question is, what's he on? What's he on? That's pretty busy for somebody who's 49 years old.
Right. Well, and here's the thing is, this is also another good example of why I say that it's important to spin plates, especially when you're younger. Now, people think that when I'm talking about spinning plates, that I mean just go out and bang anything on 2 legs. Okay. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is you need to develop a healthy dating life. And that means dating non-exclusively. If you are having sex with some of them and you are okay with premarital sex, God be with you, whatever. But if not, that doesn't mean you have to go have sex with them. It means that you have multiple opportunities. Women are natural plate spinners. You don't have to tell them to be plate spinners. They already are, because they're looking for what we said, prospective guys, or guys who have promise to them. If not, that's half of it anyway. So they're looking for a promising guy, but understand that it's just as important for you to date non-exclusively as it is for women to date non-exclusively, so you can experience more women and have understanding, and it kills off that soulmate stuff. And that's why Hunter's where he's at. What?
Rollo gives his papal blessing. God be with you, my
yeah,
son.
God be, yeah. Spin plates. Santos. So anyways, so
by the way,
when
the 28-year-old, he broke the rule though. You said no glove, no love.
Yeah, that was stupid. And why? Because he's Hunter Biden. He can do whatever the hell. I mean, there's still that ego side of things that I think he probably still has, and he's just realizing that he is Hunter Biden, and he still can. And the guy he's sustaining his sexual market value, probably mostly because of his family, and also the fact that he's loaded. I mean, we were just talking about the dirty dealings in China, or what was
Ukraine and China,
Ukraine and stuff. Yeah, so. You got a guy like that. Maybe he even seems a little bit dangerous or a little bit like on the shady side of things. Right. And it's just
the Bush family had one of their brothers that was like that. I think it was Neil he was sort of the Hunter Biden of the Bush family. And playing footloose and fancy free, especially when he was overseas. Did a lot of dealing in China because George Bush Sr. was the U.S. ambassador to China back in the day.
Well, and again, the reason that it's important to spin plates is because it helps you avoid getting into the kind of trouble that Hunter Biden is in. It also helps it, and I'm not going to name names or anything like that, but it also helps like older gentlemen who have been in those situations who get zeroed out and they still have a good chunk of change. You are a big fish. That's what, and that's you. That's like a natural. It's the lure. It's your fish. It's the natural attractant. To predatory women. And that's where you get Bezos. That's why you get this kind of stuff. And it's worse if you're trying to make up for missing out. And so suddenly all these women want to have something to do with you. A kind of a smaller version of this happens when women get into their epiphany phase and guys are just sort of transitioning from like, say, 30 to 32 years old, somewhere in there. And they find out that all the women that didn't want to have anything to do with them when they were in their 20s, suddenly they are very, very interested. And you've been the right guy all along. I just don't, finally I'm mature enough to see it. Please wait for me, for my party years so that I can marry you. It was even a joke in Friends, right? Wait for me when you're 30 and then we'll get married kind of thing. That right there is exactly why it's important to spin plates and avoid this kind of stuff. Can
I tell the story that I shared on my local program real
quick? Go.
This is another success story. Rollo Tomasi, the Rational Male, a friend of the program who's 36 years old, up and coming superstar, recently got engaged. And the other day he let me know that the engagement was off and then started to tell me the horror story. By the way, in the meantime, he had purchased a copy of the Rational Male. And this guy would bill himself as a tradcon. He's a religious guy. He says, I'm not into the plate spinning. He says, but doggone. He says, everything else Rollo said is spot on. Right. So he gets engaged to this chick. He's 36. She's 29. Right. And the mother-in-law, remember I've talked at both of our events about vetting the mother-in-law and why that's critical, especially before you get married, because that is, some people say, well, that's what your wife's going to look like in 20 years. Well, in some cases it is, and a lot of it isn't, right? But more importantly, it's a crystal ball to what your life's going to look like. If mom is a control freak, if mom is a pain in the ass, she's going to haunt you for the next 20, 30, 40 years. So my buddy gets engaged. Just some of the stuff that the mother pulled, okay? First of all, where he lives, he owns his own house. She wanted him to move closer so that her daughter could be closer to her. They live 5 miles away. 5 miles away. Yeah. That's it. Okay. Then the other thing she did is the mother-in-law went out and ordered. Oh, the mother-in-law told him that I will have final say on any of the names that we give to the kids, which I would just like spit my coffee out laughing at her. Right. And then this is the thing that broke the straw that broke the camel's back. The mother-in-law went out and without consulting either the daughter or the future son-in-law, ordered the wedding invitations, and she set the time of the service for the one that she wanted without telling anybody, and brought those home. Jeez. And it's actually the daughter that called this thing off because she said, Mom, you can't keep doing this. And the sad thing is, this girl, really nice girl, she just lost the best opportunity of her life because of her mother. Her mother is deliberately sabotaging things. And then one more real quick here. Sure. They found out that a year earlier, one of the younger sisters got married. And the mother, 5 days out from the wedding, took the groom out to breakfast and told him point blank, she says, there's still time to walk away from this. I mean, my God, my advice to the girl, the 29-year-old girl, is to move as far away from Tulsa as you possibly can. Not because Tulsa is bad, but because of your mother.
Yeah,
because of your mother. You'll never have an ounce of satisfaction in your life as long as she's around to direct it.
Yeah, that's a definite red flag. I have a lot of guys who hit me up for counseling and stuff like that, and they will tell me that if they're married, they got wrapped up in their wives' families to the point where these are usually guys who are the same kind of guys that will move across the country to be with their long distance girlfriend who will later become their wife, or they will change careers, or they will change universities so that they can fulfill this fantasy, because they believe in, first of all, they believe in the soulmate myth, but they also believe in, I've got to support her no matter what. I'm seeing a lot of this lately, what you're talking about, which is the wife insists that they live like literally blocks away from her family because she doesn't want. And if you ever want to understand what I mean when I say that you need to control frame, you need to be the dominant partner in that relationship as a man, and as a result of that, you are the biblical headship, right? If you that's got to be the deal. And the way that you know that that's not the deal, or you're not in her frame, is when she starts dictating things like that, saying we're going to go live closer to mom because when we have kids, I'm going to need her there to help me out. And it's really this kind of security thing. So if you want to know what your priority is, you are not her priority. Her family is her priority. Other things are her priority. And I'll damn well bet you anything that when the kid comes along, that kid will be a higher priority than you ever will.
When guys are dating somebody, considering marrying them, serious question you need to ask is, what if I had to move? What if my job took me out of town? Are you willing to relocate with me? I told you the story. I had a friend who was already making good money, making six figures, but it was low six figures. He had an opportunity to triple his income, putting him damn close to a seven-figure income. All right. And it was a real big move up the corporate ladder too. And he didn't take it because his wife wouldn't move with him. His wife destroyed stole his future, stole any success that he was going to have. He settled for less because she wouldn't move. You need to vet that before you even get married.
Well, and then that goes back to this blue pill understanding, or this blue pill idealism. I think that you live in an egalitarian marriage, like that's the best way to have a marriage, is egalitarian. And then, like, whenever I'm listening to Jordan Peterson, it's always about negotiations. It's not about negotiations. In fact, you will have a better marriage if you are the one who is in control of the frame. You have the world that she is entering into, and she's happy to be in that. Now, I'll give you a quick example from my own life. When I was relocating for the first time from Nevada to Orlando for the liquor company I was working for, it was the opportunity of a lifetime, and I could not turn it down. I took my wife to dinner one night and I said, we're going to be moving to Orlando. And I explained to her what the whole situation was. And there was no, well, what about my family? No, what about my career here? No, well, what about our daughter's school? What about none of that came out. It was, when are we leaving?
I told you,
she said to me, you're my husband. I go where you go. When are we leaving?
Even when I lived back in Pennsylvania, where my family's located, we lived 15 to 20 miles away from my parents and from her parents. That was deliberate. That was intentional. I've got 5 children, right? I don't want my kids living right next to me. Why? Because they'll never become independent. Also, you're going to have a situation where, guess what? I got built-in babysitters. We're just going to drop the kids off at grandma and grandpa's house. And there's it's too close. You have to have some distance between you. Otherwise, there are going to be people out there that take advantage of your good nature. That's all there is to it.
Yeah. And I'm happy, I'm happy to support, I'm the primary caregiver for my mom. I'm happy to at least somewhat support my mother-in-law even too. She rents my house in Florida now. It's, I'm a generous giving guy, right? But I still have to subscribe to enlightened self-interest. And because of that, I have a successful 23-year marriage. I'm still on top of my game. People always ask me this. They say, well, how can you possibly have a red pill marriage? And I think a lot of people, even probably yourself, you probably had a red pill marriage just because how you developed as a person.
Right.
You were brought up that way. And that just seemed natural to you. Most people don't think that, right? Most guys don't get that. They're taught that they're supposed to be supportive and they're supposed to be these, and I'm not saying don't be a supportive guy. I'm just saying that don't make that your primary impetus. You have to come first and then other people come after that, because you can't help people as well as when you help yourself first.
I am the way I am because I was the oldest of 13.
Yeah,
I really didn't have a choice. I mean, I was put into that.
Oh, you're the oldest then, huh?
Yeah, and everything, it's all on you. It's all on you, and you know that from a very early age. So you automatically like take control or take ownership of whatever's going on.
And you're of 13.
Yep. Yep. And it's funny that way too. Now, my dad, who just recently passed away, great guy. He was the pillar of the family. Everybody looked up to him,
Patriot.
But he was more of a blue pill kind of guy. He was, strong, silent type. And we knew that he'd have the final say, but mom, like I think I told you, my mother took care of all the finances. My dad was not good with money. He came home, gave the paycheck to her. Somehow she made it all work, but it was just the dynamics in our family. Everybody knew their position, their place, but dad, myself and my brother Charles, the two oldest, we're both like this, which is when I say like this, I mean wound a little too tight. You know what I'm talking about.
That's interesting. I wonder how many guys do that. They just sort of cede the responsibility of the paychecks and the bill paying over to their wives.
Right.
And I'm not like that, but I understand why women want that, because it's part of that security need. It's wanting to know that we're going to, the lights are going to still stay on next month kind of thing. Right. And I know that my wife kind of like chomps at the bit when I'm doing that, but I'm like, that's just me. I don't mind if she's right there and we're doing it together, but it's like, I got to be a part of that.
When I first got married, I was really naive about this kind of stuff. It was your money, my money. Okay. And once kids come along, that changes everything. Right. But there was actually a short period where I actually said, do you think you can do a better job? Here, go ahead. And within 3 months, that checkbook came flying back and it's all yours, because she didn't want to tackle it.
Yeah, it's funny. The way that I work out finances in my family and my house is we have our community bank account kind of thing. It's like that, and that's where everything goes. And if I have to pay my daughter something, if I give her some money or something like that, that's where that comes from. I also have my own accounts too, like my own personal accounts, which are kind of like my slush fund. So if I'm doing something like a side hustle or something like that, it goes into that. And she's totally cool with that, so that if I want to, just go grab, I basically just buy what I want to buy, unless it's like something for the family. We need to discuss something like that.
Or if your wife wants a bed, then you say no.
Yeah, then I say, well, that's another story, isn't it? Thanks, Prussia Kid, for that $9.99. Appreciate that, brother. And then I was also going to say that super chats do really good, because like I would say about 75 or 80% of all of our videos right now are in the yellow. We're not technically demonetized, but we're kind of demonetized.
Right.
So, which I expect. It's like, I'm not doing this for if I can keep this room, then I'm good with the podcast monetization. So let's talk about communication styles. Okay. I would definitely like to get into that. And I'm not really sure what we were discussing when it came. Oh, I know what it was. There
was an article here.
Article. Yeah. Go ahead.
There was an article where this lady writes in, and she's complaining about how her husband constantly berates her when they're out in public, to the point where I think they've been married for 15 years. She's ready to turn in the ring. Okay. We're late. Well, Princess over here started getting ready 24 hours ago. You know how things go. Putting all the stuff on her. I have a real problem with that. And I don't care if the guy's doing it or the girl's doing it. But ripping on your spouse, or even if it's a girlfriend, at the time, ripping on them in front of other people, that's a no-go, man. You just don't do that. That is classless. And women that do that to guys, berate them in front of other people. Oh man, it's a power play. Plus, they're also second guessing. Did I get the best choice? Did I get the best pick out of the litter? But yeah, I've seen that. People doing that. Even for some reason, I tend to see it more with older people.
Yes.
Especially where the wife is just like ripping the guy to shreds, and he's like, I'm deaf, I don't hear any of this.
Yeah, you and I have talked
no.
about we've talked about nagging on this show and your show quite a bit, actually. And I think really the hard thing is to understand like the motivations for people, like men and women, when it comes to like sort of well, for lack of a better term, verbal abuse. There's a difference between verbal abuse and like sort of passive aggressiveness. There's a lot of different angles to look at this from. Primarily, one of the things that I don't think people really get is that men and women communicate in different fashions. We innately think because it's just the way that our brains are structured. Women have a much a larger capacity for communication than men do. Men tend to be focused on content and information of the communication. It's like women talk, men do. So when men are doing something, or there's usually a problem to solve, there's a woolly mammoth to go hunt, there's a car to build, those kind of things. There's always an operative in men's communication. Like you and I are talking right here, and we're not talking just to, hey, how you doing, Pat? How are the kids, man? We don't talk about that. We talk about like the information. I mean, really, that's what the show's about, right? Is giving people content and tools. But there has to be something that is information based, and there's information passed between the two of us. And then maybe after the conversation is over, I might go, wonder what he thought of that, or wonder what so-and-so thought of that. Women are different. Women focus primarily, they prioritize the importance of the context. How did the conversation make them feel? Women will get together over coffee or whatever it is that they're doing just to talk. It's an occasion for them to look at each other face to face. Like when men are speaking like this, and we're talking and we're looking at the game, and we have something else that's going on. When women talk, they're looking directly at you, and it's this back and forth. And that's one sort of visual, physical manifestation of communication between men and women. But women tend to be more focused on what the feeling is. They get together because they like the feeling of communicating with usually another woman, and so they are more focused on the feels rather than the content. Now, I'm not saying that that's not important. It is, but it's the prioritization between the sexes. Women also have a greater facility for understanding subcommunications, for understanding innuendo, for facial features.
Let me jump on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's a perfect segue. If I could banish one form of communication instantaneously right now, it would be text messaging.
Yeah,
it is the one. I'm a professional communicator. It's what I do for a living, right? Mm-hmm. I can control what I say, how I say it, the words, everything. But with text messages, there's no way of telling what the other person looks like or sounds like when they're saying it. And women have this, I don't know, crazy. No, they read stuff into things that you never intended, or can read things into things that you never intended. I'm straightforward. I'm not a guy, who
say what you mean what you say.
Yeah, if I hate you, I'm going to tell you that to your face. Or if I think you're fat, I'm going to tell you that to your face. I'm not going to go, well, it makes you bad. I'm not going to. I'm just straight. And the thing that drives me nuts is people, and it's nobody in particular, because it's a gender thing, where females will read something into what you sent in a text message or an email that you never intended.
Yes. And the reason for that is because they're communicating on the fact that they want to deal with the feelings. And so they insert the feelings that they believe that communication should have for them. And we talked about how in the feminine primary society that we're in, that we raise our boys to be defective girls. Part of that is teaching boys to communicate like girls. So it's not that a guy can't emote and can't like prioritize feelings above information. In fact, we go to great efforts to make sure that boys are like more expressive, and that they emote and that they communicate like a woman. And so consequently, we have at least 2 generations of boys right now who don't know how to interrelate as men when they get to be men.
Michael just put this in the chat room. He said, this is classic. You didn't say that, but that's what you were thinking.
Right.
How do you know what I'm saying?
Yep. Well, the reason and why is that's a great call. Why is it that women insert that meaning? They presume that that's what you're meaning. Why is that? Okay, because they're focusing on the feels. They're focusing on what your expression of something is, what your body language is, what your facial expressions are, what your intonations are, all of this stuff. Whereas like if I'm talking to you, I want to know A plus B equals C. Let's just talk about the information, and then maybe I'm going to think about like how it made you feel when I said something, right? If I even get to that point. This also goes hand in hand with what I talk about when I talk about how our interpretive processes as human beings, we go instinct, emotion, and reason. And when it comes to communication, men prioritize instinct, reason, and then motion. Women do instinct, emotion, and then reason, and that is reflected in their innate communication styles. So when a girl, and then we need to make this really clear here because somebody was misinterpreting this today or earlier this week, is that when women need to convey a message to a guy, they want a guy to just get it. They want him to understand, like, I know what you're thinking. Like this really good example right there is they want you to just get it, or they think that they understand you because they have this feminine intuition. They think that they understand, like, what is it? There's nothing more satisfying for a woman than to believe that she has figured out a guy based solely on her quote unquote feminine intuition. And that's part of that communication style. That it goes hand in hand with that communication. So she's thinking that she's going to figure you out. Well, some guys don't get it. The guys like you and me, when we're blunt, we say what we mean what we say, and we move on. That is an overt communication style. Women communicate covertly. So covert, that's their preferred style of communicating. It's not that they can't be overt. They definitely are when they want to make sure that you get the damn message. So if a woman says, "Get away from me, you creep," that's overt. She's transferring over into a masculine way of communicating because she wants you to get away from her, that there is no, in no uncertain terms, this is what I want you to do kind of thing. Then there's like, if a woman is sexual with you and she is seeing that you're not quite reading all of her signs, she might be overt in her sexuality towards you. She might be overt in something else. If a woman is crying, if she's screaming at you, that is an overt part of communication on her part because she wants you to get the message. It's not that all women are just going to be like freaking out and going, "Oh my God," that's not it. Okay. What it means is that when a woman wants you to understand that information, she has to come over into your communication style. Now, the opposite is true for men. Men who understand female nature and can communicate with them. Now, a lot of people say, "Well, you're just playing games. You should just go out there and you should just, say what you mean and mean what you say." Women don't want to be told that they're playing a game. They want to play the game with you. That's why I wrote that essay called "Just Get It." They want you to just get it. And if you understand that the medium is the message, if you understand that women communicate covertly, you learn how to sort of lean over into those things. And like I'm sure you've heard this as well. Women who will say, "He just understands me so much. He just gets me," or "He just gets it," kind of thing. Those guys that have that kind of, whether it's practiced or learned, or it's just this innate ability on their part, they understand that women communicate in different ways, that the nuance of it and everything else. So it's not that men can't cross over into that as well. The great seducers of the past, male seducers of the past, understood how women communicate, and they use that to their advantage. So there are two different communication styles here. Now that we've laid that out, we need to talk about why a woman is on the verge of, divorcing her husband because he's verbally abusive or he doesn't get it.
Yeah, but he constantly, and I had a friend who went through this sort of thing where the husband is just, he's being a jerk. He's constantly, anything you do, that's stupid. And it gets that wears you down after time, to the point where, you even go to the grocery store, you're second guessing, am I getting the right detergent here? I mean, you're second guessing yourself, because what they're doing is, it's a giant mind game they're playing with you.
Right.
If they're constantly doing it, and they're doing it in front of other people, they're doing it to humiliate you.
Yeah. But you got to ask yourself why, like we've talked about why a woman would nag a guy. And we've said, and I've offered the idea that it's because women are constantly asking the same hypergamous doubt question, which is he the best that I can possibly do? So what happens then? What happens when it's the guy, though? What happens when the guy that is verbally berating as well? Well, it might be that he is unsatisfied with the situation he's in, but he feels like he's trapped in that situation. Right. He can't get out of it. It's easier to moan and groan and know that they're both pretty much stuck with one another, whether that's because it's an unhealthy, dysfunctional relationship, or it's because the guy is more or less trapped in that relationship, and that's his only way of venting. That's his only way of getting it out. Right. I'm not trying to excuse him being abusive. Analysis is not endorsement, in case anybody needs to know that. Okay, analysis is not endorsement. But why is the guy doing that? Why is a woman passive aggressive? Why is a guy passive aggressive or openly aggressive? And people say, well, they're just screwed up in the head. Well, okay, but what made them screwed up in the head? What is contributing to that?
The whole mindset, though, too, because I went through a phase with this earlier myself. And in fact, I picked up a book called Change Your Thinking, Change Your Life. Mm-hmm. It's written by Brian Tracy. And I sort of had an epiphany around the age of 40. The only person you can change is yourself. This idea that you can change other people doesn't work. But when I was first married, I would come home, and maybe I'm strung out from work, I'm ticked off about this thing or that thing. But then you start picking on everything that's negative. Why isn't this picked up? Why is this the way it is? Yeah. That's not going to be really conducive to a healthy home life, because it's not as bad as embarrassing them in public, right, in front of somebody else or family members. But it's everything and I think part of it was because of the way I grew up. I grew up in a really big household, and we tended to concentrate on the negative. In fact, the way we showed affection with each other was ripping on each other in the morning, even like we were in grade school, high school. You're wearing that to school? You kidding me? Seriously? Do you know what that looks like? I mean, but that's the way we insulted each other, but we did it. It was to show affection. And people that aren't in my family, they came in and saw this. They go, "Oh my God, I'd be in the fetal position."
They think that's toxic masculinity is what they.
But our family, I mean, even with the girls, that was the way we showed affection.
Oh yeah, it's funny is like my brother has a son and a daughter, and I only have a daughter, and so when I'm over there, and I'm really close with my brother and their family, and when I see the dynamics between the brother and the sister, and my brother's very much an alpha, and he's raised his kids, his son as an alpha, and my niece, his daughter, is I think she understands guys in a way that if you don't have a brother, you don't understand. So like, and they're the only two people that they have, so they're pushing each other, and they're testing each other, and it's not like they're like ready to fight and actually hurt each other. Like he would probably take a bullet for his sister. My nephew would take a bullet for his sister, but he gives her, shit, it's like, it's that, ribbing kind of stuff. And that's another good example of male communication is guys do stuff like that. We haze each other. We test each other, and we do that. And why do we do that? We do that because we want to understand that, like, you're cool. You understand the communication that I make. I'm not really, your enemy. I'm not actually trying to like insult you, but I'm insulting you in a way that a guy insults another guy to test if you're cool.
Yeah.
And that's really the only way I can put it is like, are you cool? Then here, take one on the chin, and I'll give you one on the chin, and you screw around with you mess with each other. Right. And that's, team sports. I've been in so many bands. I can't even remember that we always would do stuff like that. And we would always, practical jokes and that kind of stuff. And now I think in this generation, we have lost that because we have focused so much on trying to turn young men into women, but also communicating like women. And so when they see that from a different generation, they think it's hazing. They think it's bullying. They think that it's in some way like unhealthy. It's toxic masculinity. The APA said so. If you go and you give your buddy grief, then we need to send you to re-education camp because you don't.
I'm thinking back to my household growing up, and one of my sisters was particularly sensitive to that kind of stuff, and she had a meltdown one time, and she says, "Why can't anybody be nice to me?" Right? Mm-hmm. And the rest of us are all there like, "Marsha." I mean, we turned that into a joke,
Yeah, but they don't. She doesn't understand that they are being nice to you by doing that. Yes, that's how it works. Because
the more they pick on you, that means the more they like you.
Right. And I'll tell you this is like, if she was getting grief or she was getting hate or insults or anything from outside the family, your family would probably be the first one to go and defend her.
Oh, absolutely.
that.
Yeah, you can be fighting like cats and dogs at home, but if you're out on the street, somebody picks on your brother, your sister, you got their back.
Well, you know, and then that also goes back to the to male nature, especially with intrasexual relationships.
Right.
Is we need to test each other. We need to know that the other guy is cool. We need to know that that other dude has our back. And if we're out hunting the woolly mammoths, we need to know that if the saber-toothed tiger comes around, we're going to get together and we're going to fight him off. And you want to, Jack Donovan's fantastic about this. If anybody hasn't read The Way of Men, read that book and you will understand exactly what I'm talking about here. Is you test other men so that you know that you're better together than you would be apart.
Right.
Right. And you would have some sort of team where you have some sort of, you know, backing. And even if people say, well, that's not really necessary in 2019. Yeah, it is. Absolutely. It's necessary. And the reason you don't get it is because you've been conditioned to believe something different.
So did you go ahead?
Oh, what I was just gonna say is like when it comes to the nagging part, or when it comes to like passive aggressiveness, I should probably publish it now. I've got a post in my drafts folder for the Rational Male, and it's about passive aggressiveness, and I haven't really fleshed it out, but I think I might after this, because this is giving me a lot of ideas.
Well, you asked here, you said, why is female communication the correct form?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the reason why it is because we live in a feminine primary society right now, and that and 77 to 70 or to 80% of our teachers today are females, and they teach men and they teach boys, young men, to prioritize the feeling of a conversation or the feeling of that communication above all else. That's what I was saying before. Is like, it's not that like our innate proclivity is to say what we mean what we say, and be overt, be blunt. And if we're a little bit vulgar, we're a bit vulgar as well, but we're doing that in the interest of, communicating, what we do. Women, on the other hand, have an innate proclivity for communication in a way that men just simply don't have mechanically. And so, but if we live in a social order that prioritizes female correctness, part of that correctness is always going to be the correct way to have a conversation is to emote and to relate like a female would. And so when I was reading this one article, I think it was in the Boston Globe or something like that, and they were talking about how older men don't have friends, and they have this epidemic of loneliness. And so they're offering all of these solutions for guys who are in their middle age, or maybe they got zeroed out, maybe they didn't. Why is it that 4 or 5 times the amount of guys kill themselves between the ages of 45 and 65 or something like that? Why is that? Well, they don't have these social networks. Why? Because they're not girls, they're not women. They don't relate like women. They don't have the same social networks that women develop throughout their lives. So their solution to this problem is, you need to relate more like a woman. You need to get together for coffee with your guy friends and talk about your feelings. And it's like bullshit. It's like bullshit, because when I read stuff like that, it just says to me, they don't understand how men relate. They don't understand that women talk and men do. Whenever I've had guys who said, like Chris Von Erich was saying, we're going to get together and we're going to do a Rational Male focus group, or we're going to do a book group or something like that. I told him, like, great, do that. But go fishing while you're doing it, or go to the gun range and shoot guns while you're talking about it. Have something else that you're doing, because that's how guys communicate. We have to be wrenching on a car to actually talk. Like, some of the best conversations I ever had with my dad, and they were very few, but the ones that I do remember, it was when he was doing woodworking, and I would go in there and I would work with him as well, and we would talk some good shit. So, but they don't understand. They don't understand that the key to solving that problem, like men's loneliness or men's like isolation from other men, is not that the solution to that is not to act more like a woman. It is to act more like a man, and to understand how to interact like a man.
A way to communicate that's not often seen as communication is touch. We've talked about this before. Mm-hmm. The power of touch. And for the guys out there, this is a tremendous tool for you to use, and not to necessarily abuse, but to use it in a good way. The something as simple as, well, like we talked before. Okay, when you get in a fight with a woman, all right, mm-hmm. and things are tight right there. First thing, puts a hand, don't touch, because they're better at this than we are. they know the power of touch.
Right.
And I think it was Joel
Mhm.
Osteen did one of his talks about you're supposed to touch your wife, your spouse.
Mhm.
You're supposed to touch them at least 13 times a day in a non-sexual way. I don't know where he came up with the number, but I mean, something as simple as just taking your wife's or your girlfriend's hand, right?
Mhm.
They love that.
Mhm.
They're going to melt over that because to them, that's important. To guys, not as much, but to them, that's powerful.
Oh,
You know?
human
Like
touch. Human touch.
first time you hold your wife's hand or your girlfriend's hand, they remember that. They can tell you exactly when that happened and how it made them feel. See, it's the feeling thing.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is that there is, and then this is scientifically proven, that human touch releases endorphins, and it releases I don't know if it's dopamine. I know it releases endorphins, and that's why they like. And I've just learned this recently is that when there are geriatric patients or there are people who are going to like assisted living or they're going to old folks homes, they encourage you to touch them and to hug them and to kiss them and to give some sort of physical affection because that is healing to them. Like
Plus how they stress with
it gives
seniors.
them, and it releases stress.
Right.
Like a hug. And you're I forget where I read, somebody said you're supposed to have like 7 hugs a day or something like that. And I understand like when the other thing, the opposite is true is for babies. Like babies, when a baby is born, you hug it and you want to hold on to it. And there was a difference. I think there was a gender difference. Like we pick up girls more than we pick up boys. We want to wrestle with the boy, we want to pick up the girl. I mean, there's a evolutionary reason for that as well, but like little children don't thrive, like little infants don't thrive unless you pick them up and you hug them.
They showed, I remember seeing a documentary, it might have been a segment on 2020 originally, but it was, remember the orphans over in like Kosovo and places like that, the way they had these little kids and they're a couple of like nuns or nurses to take care of them, but they never had that touch, that critical touch during the first few months of their life. And because of that, they weren't able to, as they got older, bond with other people.
Yeah. Early pickup artists picked up on that too. And they developed this, a technique, but this whole idea of what's called kinesthetics. And it's touch, and it's touch at certain times when you're in an approach or when you're seducing, sarging a woman, whatever. There's that touch aspect of it that releases that hormone, or that releases those endorphins at that particular time, because and there is a technique called the takeaway, where it's like you do this touch and you're with her, and then if it's like behavioral modification, and women do this too, by the way. I shouldn't just blame it on pickup artists. So women will, if you're familiar with a woman, if you're intimate with a woman and you're touching her and you're hugging her, and then all of a sudden like something you did was wrong, some kind of behavior that you did was wrong, they take away that reward. And that's what human touch becomes, is it becomes a positive reinforcement. It's operant conditioning. Here I'm going to be a behavioral psychologist again. It's a positive reinforcement that you acclimate a woman to, or a man is acclimated to, and then when you remove that, it's a punishment because you're removing that away. Or I should say it's a negative reinforcement. You're taking away a reward. And your brain, even though we can talk about this, our brain will still respond to that. And depending on what your nature is as a guy, if you're a guy who is usually a high SMV guy and you're not worried about that kind of stuff, maybe you will interpret that in a different way than, say, a guy who needs that, a guy who realizes that that's a reward for him, and that if he's being pushed away and a woman does a push-pull, or she takes it away, what does he do? He pursues. He goes after it. It's like the rat in the Skinner box, right? It's like, press the lever, give me my pellet again. What do I have to do to get you to give me my positive reinforcement, which is, it's this touch kind of thing.
I'm looking at the clock here. We've got to get to this Mark Field story.
Sure.
Out of the UK. Do you want me to set it up?
Yeah. If you have super chats, really quickly, if you have super chats, get them in right now. And because we got about half an hour left.
Yeah. So anyway, there's this get together over in the UK, and it's a bunch of foreign dignitaries that are together, and mostly from the UK. And some protesters come in. They look like they're dressed to go to this event. Women in particular, they got like red gowns on, and they're there as disruptors. They're coming to stir stuff up. Somehow they got through security. Security didn't do the job. Do you have this video ready to play here?
I did. I don't know if it's going to come in though.
So one of these guys takes matters. He gets up. Mark Field.
The link is in the description if anybody wants.
Mark Field gets up and he confronts the woman, puts his hand around her neck, and forcefully escorts her out of the place. He doesn't strike her, doesn't hit her, but it's like, you want to be treated as equals, but now all of a sudden, oh, I'm a delicate little girl, you can't do this to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I told you we had an incident here where I live with the Rogers County Sheriff, Scott Walton, about a year ago, where there was an event. It was a forum, and it was about medicinal marijuana. And one of the guys there, he didn't particularly like it. He wasn't doing anything bad or being really disruptive, but the sheriff grabbed him by the neck, and forcefully escorted him out. Well, you can't do that. You can't do that in 2018. And he's got himself some legal problems because of that. But if he did that to a woman, I mean, it's 10 times worse. 10 times worse.
I just put the link in the chat right there. It's not. Maybe it's because we're live casting right now, but it's not coming up for me right now. So yeah, I was just gonna say this is exactly what she wanted to happen, which is this strong arming. Like, here's the patriarchy. It's right here in front of you.
Toxic masculinity. Right there.
And I hate to harp on the gender war once again, but this is exactly what they want. They're waiting for these kinds of incidences because it's men behaving badly is what it is.
Security should have stopped her.
The security should have grabbed her. And you know what? I applaud the guy for doing exactly what he did. He didn't hurt her. He just grabbed her. He collared her and forced her out. Any bouncer at a club would do a whole lot worse to you than that.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think what we're gonna see is a lot of where there's gonna be opportunities to overblow things like this.
Right.
What was it? I think was it during the Trump campaign? Wasn't it the guy who like elbowed that one girl or something out of the way? I forget which guy it was, but it was. No,
yeah.
What was which one I'm talking about?
Yeah,
it was his. Was it his campaign manager or something like that?
Yeah, I can't think of the name right now, but it's the guy. Corey. What is it? Corey.
Not Cory Booker. Corey. Something or other. You know who I'm talking about, though. And there was almost I think it was like almost a lawsuit that was drawn up for it as well. But as soon as it was out of the limelight, nobody cared about it anymore. Those kind of things you're going to see pop up once again, because in the coming election, and we're already in the election cycle, you are going to see an escalation, I think, of the social cold gender war, where these kind of incidences are going to be completely blown out of proportion, but they are going to all have one main focus, which is this is the patriarchy. This is what we need to fight against. This is what the resistance is against, kind of thing. And it will be, I've been harping on this really since last October, and talking about how every month there's a new I won't say a new front, but a new incident that reinforces the gender war. Like in January, it was the Gillette commercial. I'm not saying that this is particularly it. There might have been something else that came along that I'm not really seeing, but this could certainly be it. And it's not, remember, this is in the UK. This isn't in the United States, but yet it's going viral because it's an example of patriarchy, or violent, hostile patriarchy.
We should do either a segment or a show on British women, though. There's tons of stuff there. Just the way they conduct themselves, behave publicly, and it's just
Corey Lewandowski. That's who it was.
Yep.
I remember that. Yeah, we should. We could probably do a whole episode of like the differences between women in different countries. I'm actually kind of hitting on that a little bit with the religion and red pill, because I get a lot of different ethnicities coming in, and certainly different cultural perspectives, different religious perspectives. And it seems like when you are part of a nationality, or you have some sort of ethnic identity, like you want to protect your women. You want to say, well, if somebody comes in and starts saying, well, your women are easy. I went to Germany and I could go and I could pick up chicks a whole lot easier there than I could in the United States, kind of thing. If you go and say that, guys will get upset. And honestly, I think that's kind of like I think human beings have a natural, and that right there is definitely an example of it.
Did you want to get some of those chats?
I don't think we had all that many, to be honest with you. If anybody has questions, please throw. Oh wait, I got one here. Hold on a second.
I thought you were putting some in the. slug over there.
I was. Here it is. YOLO here says, hi, what is the healthy, correct way to communicate in a relationship for a man? Good question. Women's way or man's way, or should we compromise and use both? Thanks. You know what, YOLO, you actually do use both right now, but I think that depending on how you have been conditioned in your life, you will default to one or the other. If you see, like what we were just talking about here a minute ago, if you see guys who are ribbing each other and it seems like hazing to you, or you see guys in a family, like brothers, like beating up on each other, and you think that that's bullying, you probably have a conditioning that says that, you know, you're seeing that in the perspective of, you know, guys are bad, gender, masculinity is bad. And if that's your priority in your thinking process, it's usually because you have been conditioned to think in terms of how, you know, to prioritize emotion and to prioritize feelings and all that good stuff before you interpret it from a reasonable, rational side of things. Now, guys beating up on each other, they're guys, let's just say guys physically testing each other, is a form of communication between men. So when we're giving each other grief, or we're joking around with each other, even making each other look bad, it is a test. It's like, are you cool? Are you with me? Do you get this? And I think that it's easy to see in guys who don't get it, why they don't get it. Like my dad was like that too. My dad never really understood how to, like, if you were joking around with my dad, he would take things very, very literally. And if you were just messing around with him and just, like, you know, trying to give him shit, basically, you had to, like, almost make it really obvious that you were doing it. And I think it kind of comes down to, like, how your upbringing, you know, predisposes you to interpreting those things. So what's the correct way to do it? Well, I think with men, obviously, you relate with men as men. And I think that I think most guys need to establish their communication as the predominant one. If you're going to establish frame in a relationship, you definitely need to communicate as a man to your wife, and that should be your default. I'm not saying don't, like, consider her feelings or don't come over and do that once in a while, but that needs to be where you go naturally. Go ahead.
I was going to say with women, there are women out there who will tell you that they like to mix it up like guys, you know, that they like to give people shit, right? And to a degree, that's true, but you're never going to be able to mix it up the way you would with another guy. I equate sometimes women are like the wings of a butterfly. Once touched, it's never going to get off the ground, you know, kind of a deal. They will play tough, but in reality, they're delicate. It should be handled with care. Slapped on the side. That's a bad thing. But you got to be cognizant of that if you're mixing it up.
What's going to happen now is people are going to listen to this and go, "Oh, well, Rollo just says be an asshole." You know, you always be over. No, you need to establish yourself as the dominant partner in that relationship, and in doing so, your communication style is the predominant one. That doesn't mean don't, you know, listen to her when she's crying, or don't emote, or don't be emotionally available. I'm just saying is that your default needs to be, this is how I'm going to relate with you. I'm not going to relate with you as your girlfriends are going to relate with you. In fact, I think a lot of guys, when they are brought up or they're conditioned to be more sensitive, to identify with the feminine, like get in touch with your feminine side. Those guys who get raised in that kind of conditioning, they don't, well, first of all, they don't understand how to interrelate as men, but they also default to that when they're interrelating with women. So women's, like, subconscious understanding of how they're being related to by that guy, if that guy is relating to her as a woman would, her natural impulse is to just see her as another girlfriend. So when I say women have boyfriends and girlfriends, and if you're not having sex with her, you are her girlfriend, I mean that in the most literal sense, because what women do is, if you don't establish yourself as someone with frame, if she's dealing with a guy who communicates like a woman, her subconscious is going to understand you as a woman, and you will then end up being like her girlfriend, because she will relate to you as a girlfriend. Because what else would she do? You're relating to her as a girl would. So she's going to relate back to you as a girl would. So
Somebody
you become her girlfriend.
In the chat about that earlier, where gay men in particular have a much easier time of communicating with women because some of them, it's obviously not all, but some of their communication style. Somebody had one that they sent me from my local show on this too, that sort of tied in with what we're talking about. Basically starting with, is it possible for a woman to be stable? And let me explain what they meant, okay? I'll use myself as an example, okay? I'm pretty even keyed. Yeah, every once in a while I get a little moody, but if you see me on the first of the month and the last day of the month, it's going to be the same pattern you're seeing. Whereas women tend to be like on an emotional roller coaster. And I don't know if it's tied specifically into, the menstrual cycle, whatever, but even women that are past that, they go in they ebbs and flows, peaks and valleys. It's not, straight across. It's not steady. But is it possible to find a woman or get with a woman that is more even keeled across the board rather than the peaks and the valleys?
Yeah. Yeah. And is that a possibility? I would say certainly, but here's the thing is you need to set that out in the beginning. You need to be the dominant partner in that relationship. She needs to enter into your world. And most guys don't give themselves permission to do that. 80% of beta men believe in an egalitarian position between men and women. And if you're doing that, you are defaulting to hers. If you are not insisting that you are the dominant frame in that relationship and you think you're doing things by the book, like 50-50 even Steven kind of thing, she is the one who is going to be controlling that relationship. And it is her frame into which you will be entering into. So if there's a right or a wrong way to do this, I would say guys need to learn to communicate as men, first of all, and to unlearn all of that feminine communication. Now, I'm not saying, I'm not saying don't be, emotionally available, whatever, but you need to insist on your frame, your communication style as a result of that. And you are the decision maker. That's headship right there. And if she doesn't follow along with that, then you don't have a relationship. It's just as easy as that.
I just hear the objection. That's not fair. It's like
no, it's not. And you know what else? Men and women are different. That's not fair either. And I think that's what and we really need to do a whole show on egalitarian equalism and blank slate. The blank slate, because people, when you hear, like I'm hearing those responses in my head too as I'm saying this. Well, that's not fair for women. What about women? Women do this, or it's oh great, you're telling guys to be these domineering assholes. No, I'm just saying insist on your own frame. And if that's not the case, and if I can't be sure that I have my own frame, if I can't be sure 100% sure of my own frame, how can a woman be sure of my frame? How can
I would add this to the conversation too. And how do we communicate with women? If you're having a crucial discussion, it has to be face to face. It can't be over the phone. It can't be via text message. Yeah. It has to be face to face.
Well, I tell guys that's one of the first chapters in The Rational Male is buffers, is to unlearn your buffers or try at least. And it's hard for guys too, because if a guy has been brought up to hide behind his texts, or to hide behind, we used to do that. Maybe you remember this back in high school, back before we had cell phones and the internet. We used to send notes to girls. We write a note and we give it to her and we go, oh God, I hope she will like me and go steady with me. We used to do stuff like that. That's a natural thing for guys to want to find some sort of, barrier or buffer between the rejection and, oh God damn it, because it's easier to just give her the note and tell her what you're thinking through the note than it is to actually go there and say, hey, think about it.
And then the teacher would find it and read it in front of her.
Yep, and then you're screwed. And yeah, I remember those days. We got one more here from Tim Allen.
Tim Allen?
The Tim Allen? All right. Well, okay, Tim, call in. Yeah, come on in. Anyways, he says, tips on how to get over a breakup. I had plans to propose and she ended up leaving for another guy and quickly got engaged. I feel like a failure and less of a man. Well, okay. There's a few things, there's a lot going on there. I would probably need a little bit more information to fully diagnose this, but there's a few things that you do need to know is that when you break up, when a woman breaks up with you, you are cutting off remember we were just talking about those dopamine hits and all that endorphins that you get addicted to. That's when they talk, that song Addicted to Love, that it's very true.
You didn't cut them off. She did though. The difference on how a relationship ends, whether you're pulling the plug or she is. That's a big game changer.
Well, and there's I'm gonna have to go dig up a link for this, but there are studies that show that there are chemical markers in the chemical cocktail that is released when you're in love with someone or infatuated with someone or you're in lust with someone that is very similar to heroin. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what you're going through right now, Tim Allen, is you have to detox. I'm going to post I'll give you a link here in just a minute. I have an essay called Detox, which is exactly what you're going to have to go through. And you have to understand that you're going to try to reestablish those good feelings in some way. That's why guys drink after they get broken up with, because it's a substitute for the good feelings that they had with, and I mean literal good bodily chemical feelings. And so they're trying to reinitiate that. And so that's why guys drink. Women do too. So she ended up leaving you for another guy. Well, I can explain to you why that is. If she's decided that she's going to go off with this guy, he was a better choice, or at least she thought at that one particular time that he was a better choice than you were, and she was waiting for him to be responsive. Now, I always tell guys this, and this is iron rule of Tomasi, which is if any woman that makes you wait for sex, the sex is never worth the wait. If she's implying with her actions that it's now, I'm not saying that a woman should just put out on the first date. Okay. I'm just saying that if she is intentionally making you wait for it, that the sex is not going to be worth the wait. Now, the reason I do this is because the reason I say this is not because of the sex side of things. It's the desire side of the same things. Why does a woman make you wait for sex? Because she has some sort of mitigating thing in between it. Sometimes that could be a religion. Sometimes it's just the way she's brought up. But in this day and age, it's usually because she has a better proposition on call. She is, like we were saying at the beginning of this program when I was talking about plate spinning. Women are natural plate spinners, and it's appropriate and it's correct for her to do so. It is prudent for her to have multiple suitors and to choose from the best one. That is just simple Darwinian hypergamy 101 right there. Have a larger pool of guys from which to select and go with the best one. That just simply makes sense. So, and women don't look, hypergamy doesn't seek its own level. So they're looking for the bigger and better deal. They're looking for something that is above what they probably think that they deserve when it comes to their own sexual market value. So why are you in this situation? Well, at some point along the way, that guy seemed like a better choice than you were. So what are you going to do about it? That's the next thing. Are you going to sit there and wallow in self-pity, or are you going to get back on the damn horse and ride again and learn from this situation and build yourself up and become a better version of yourself, so that when this shit happens again and you see this happening again, you will know what to do. You act accordingly.
Now, did he say that she left him and got married to another guy?
He said, I had plans to propose and she ended up leaving for another guy and quickly got engaged. So I think a lot of guys in this situation will think that the guy came along and just swooped her and unfairly, we were talking about the bro code, right? Just came in and swooped her up and swept her off her feet, and now they're getting married. Well, is that a reward? You know, I don't know if that's the kind of thing that if it would easily happen, maybe this wasn't the relationship that you thought it was. I don't know. I would have to ask a lot of more questions.
Like that early on, where I was dating a girl for probably about maybe 2.5 years. She wanted to get married. Okay. I was not ready to get married. I broke off the relationship. Probably within 6 months, she was engaged and got married to some other guy. She had a clock ticking. She had a plan. She had a clock ticking. She wasn't going to wait for me, and I'm not going to be forced into doing something I don't want to do. Mm-hmm. So I broke it off. But I mean, this guy is going to run into the problem where he constantly keeps thinking about her, dwelling about it. Mm-hmm. Going to try to get back with her, in fact, if she doesn't get married, you know. And that's what's your line about never pays to go rummaging through the trash?
Right. Yeah. Never go rummaging through the trash after you've taken it to the curb. And also, if you are the trash can and you are taken to the curb, same thing applies. Yeah. I mean, I need to ask more questions about this, because really what it says to me is that if this guy was like planning to get engaged, I mean, is it because he read more into it? Because if she is the kind of girl who would just simply dump him at a moment's notice and then get engaged immediately afterwards, I mean, that's a war bride situation right there, is what that is.
That might have been the reason for her doing what she did.
Yeah,
Plus,
I would need more information. So, Tim Allen, if you want to email me, give me a little bit more background.
all right, so I'm looking at the clock here. We're just about time to wrap it up.
Wait, I got one more. I got one more real quick. This is from Davey Furtado. He said, thoughts on cold approach. Is it worth practicing? Let me tell you something about cold approach. I do not believe in spamming approaches. I know some people will probably disagree with me. Like if you're into pickup artistry or whatever, and you just think, oh, I'm just going to go to the club and ask every chick out, and eventually somebody will say, and it's like, that's kind of, I understand why that, like RSD and some of the old pickup artists would tell you to do that, because it's usually so you'll get over the fear of approaching. So spamming approaches is not about actually hooking up with chicks. It's actually about you overcoming your approach anxiety, so that if you do it enough and you get rejected enough, that it's no big deal the next time you do it, and you learn a little bit more game. So people mistake that. They think that it's a numbers game, and they're just going and asking every girl in the club, and if she says yes, great. If she says no, whatever. Or there's I think it was RSD. They did this one experiment where they got their guys to go into a club and deliberately try to get rejected from as many women as they possibly could, so that they would get over that approach anxiety. So what's the key then? Am I into cold approaches? I would say yes, but only under controlled environments. Okay. So if you're, I'm not saying go approach women on the streets, right now that's almost illegal, particularly in the UK, but I think that it's a consistency game. It's not a numbers game. It's a consistency game. So here's what I would suggest you to do. Make one approach every weekend. Go, if you're at a club or you're doing something social or you're at the beach or whatever it is, do one approach every weekend. And then at the end of a year, you'll have done 52 approaches. And make sure that you're learning those things, and you learn from your failures, you learn from your successes as well. But at the end of a year, you'll have done 52 approaches, and 52 approaches is more approaches than men will do in a lifetime. The average man will ever do in a lifetime. So it's consistency, it's learning. It's not about spamming. It's about doing it, but it's about the learning process as well.
Is that for married guys too?
Yeah, is that for married guys? Well, I mean, I think there's a variation of that. Okay, when you're in a marriage, I think that it's not so much a fear of rejection as it is a fear to experiment. It's a fear to offend. It's like guys in the average beta blue pill husband doesn't want to rock the boat. He's like, well, she controls the pussy, man, so I got to do what she tells me to. Can't, man. Wife said no. Can't, man. Wife said no. That kind of stuff. When guys, you hear that enough, guys won't attempt things, and they just get into this one thing, and then that's what makes them predictable in a relationship. So my advice to guys along the same veins is not approaching, of course. It is try different things. Be fearless to try things with your wife, and you'll be surprised where that gets you. Let's see. One last one here. I agree with everything. My only concern, and this is Pizza Rolos. Thanks. My only concern is, how are we going to fix women? Create our own church. You know what, man? I'm gonna refer you to my show yesterday, because I talked about that exact topic in Religion in the Red Pill yesterday. So go check that out. I did a really great show with Conk yesterday from a Christian perspective. I still want to get you, Mr. Campbell, on that show as my token Catholic.
Gotta clear it with the Pope Francis.
Yeah, your official Catholic statement. I've got some really good people lined up for that. I've got a couple of prominent guys from Muslim community from a red pill perspective. I got Abu American, and I've got Nabil Aziz, I think is the name he goes by. I've got both of those guys. I'm going to see if I can get them both on the same show and do a red pill and religion about Islam. And then I've got, I just confirmed, I've got I forget what her name is. She's a lady in India right now who's a men's rights activist in India, and I wanted to sort of pick her brain on Hinduism and the cultural differences with respect to the red pill in India. So I've got that. Those are on tap right now. So I guess we'll move into our bookkeeping here. Do you have anything you wanted to?
So you're bringing a woman on the program?
Yes, I am, but I'm bringing her on the Religion in the Red Pill I don't know that I would ever bring her on here, or I would ever bring a woman on my other ventures, but I will when it comes to religion, and in this one in particular.
I think you had a female guest. That's why you just caught me sort of.
I don't usually do that. I will for the religion and red pill show, but I wouldn't do it for.
Said he would never, ever, ever have a woman.
Yeah, and I get that. I think that the problem with having a woman on this show is exactly the problem that we ran into about 2 weeks ago on your show, when the woman will just simply talk you down and raise her voice and talk over you while you're trying to make a point. I think that's half of the problem that I have. And then the other thing is it would be very easy for me to get a woman on this show or any of my other shows, and then have them agree with me the whole time. And that's not what I want. I would still want to have that back and forth. But the problem is, particularly when it comes to religion, and particularly when it comes to dealing with women, is that there's ego investments in the righteousness of whatever it is that they believe in. So when I'm talking to a woman, I'm on your show, I'm always, I don't say I'm always on guard, but I'm always expecting certain things. Like I know that when I'm talking to a woman on your show, it's always going to be rooted in blank slate equalism. Well, if a man did this, or if a woman does this, you always talk about the women. Why don't you talk about the men? Like I do, but that's not the topic. The topic right now is about women, and I'm sorry that it's unflattering, whatever it is that I'm revealing for you. But the topic right here is we're talking about women right now, and we're not used to that.
Women tend to personalize everything, and I've noticed this as a talk show host for 20 plus years. There is a huge difference between the genders. I can control what I say, how I say it, but I can't control what people think or hear they think. And a lot of times, in fact, I can't tell you the number of times I've had female listeners think that I'm talking specifically about them, because whatever it is so close.
That's the other thing.
They internalize it, and they'll call you or me. That's not how it was in my house, or that's not how it was in my situation. We're talking about generalities here, not your place.
Yeah, that's because women naturally default to a state of solipsism. That's why. And so, and the way that women defend that is, if you're talking about some sort of aspect of women's nature that is unflattering to them, their first defense is, well, men do it too. Men do it, and worse. Right. That's always because there has to be some sort of misdirection, or there has to be some diversion away from what it is that you're revealing about them. And instead of actually talking about it, learning from it, and growing from that, it's like, no, we can't talk about that. What about men? Men do it too. Men are horrible. And I get that all the time, like from women on your show, but I don't want to just pick on them. I get it from all kinds of women, and that's their default real way of relating, I guess, is like, if it's generally attacking them, their ego investments feel like they're attacking them personally, and so their personal experience is what defines the universal whole, like that. So anyways, that's a long way of saying why I'm reluctant to have women on the show.
Is there a way to circumvent that, to talk with a woman, to address a woman where she doesn't internalize it?
And to be completely rational, that's interesting, because like when we were talking about how men and women communicate differently, it's also an interpretive process. So women are always going to go instinct, emotion, reason. Men are going to go instinct, reason, and then emotion, just simply because that's the way we're wired. So is there a way to do that? I think if you taught a woman, if you taught her to be a little bit more rational, to prioritize the rational above even her own self-interests, if you could teach a woman to prioritize reason and rationality above her solipsism and her ego investment, then maybe that's possible, but not in the world I live in. So I think technically it should be possible. You should be able to condition or teach somebody to do what, you can teach human beings to go against their own compulsion, their own evolved nature. You can teach them to do that. You can teach human beings to go against their gag reflex and their revulsion reflex, and to actually get turned on by things that would otherwise make us revolt. We would get away from it. We want to get away from it. So yes, can you teach someone to go against their particular nature, yes, but I think that in doing so, you would be called a misogynist and you know, a horrible, toxically masculine man. So,
all right, let's wrap things
all right,
up.
we'll wrap up. What do you got going on? We're gonna see each other on Friday again, right? Okay, Friday at 9:05 Eastern on you want to give the plug?
Yeah, Talk Radio 1170 KFAQ.
Cool. All right. And then I am going to be doing Religion in the Red Pill this week. Look for it. I haven't decided which day it's going to be. It'll probably be a Tuesday or a Wednesday at this stage. And yes, I am going to do an AMA this week as well. So look for that either Monday or Thursday, depending on what day.
AMA, on ask you whatever they want.
AMA, ask me anything. Ask whatever you would like. It'll be just all about, it'll be all advice. So you can call in and ask me your personal problems or whatever else. So give me a chat and come in, and I will see you on that day. And then of course, meet us here once again every Sunday at 4:30 Eastern. This is the Rational Male 101. Thank you guys for watching. I very much appreciate this.
Out.
All right, guys.